Pregame.com.
SEC championship action on Saturday kicks off things here at pregame.com. We've got Alabama taking on Georgia. The Crimson Tide laying 7.5, the total sitting at 50.5. And I'm going to brag a little bit here. Marco and I both had over projected win total on the Georgia Bulldogs back in August when we did our preview shows on the radio, and it came through. But the reason we did it partially was that they played a soft schedule. Their schedule, though, was even softer than I thought it was going to be. I don't know about you, Marco, but they played, you think about Missouri, Tennessee, Auburn, games you think are going to be a little bit tougher before the season. All three of those teams, or at least two, we know have new coaches. And Gary Pinko, there's rumors out there that he's resigning. We don't know for sure yet. But it was a softer schedule than we thought. What do you think now that they're in this game? They haven't had to face LSU, Georgia. They haven't had to face Alabama. As far as I'm concerned, Bama, on my power ratings, a couple of points above the number they're laying in this one, Brian.
Yeah, both of the teams have actually had a very easy schedule for playing in the SEC this year. And I think, at least for the Georgia reasoning, that's part of the reason why they are in the championship game, because of the schedule that they had played. Yeah, it's funny. Everybody's looking at this game, and it has tremendous significance, obviously. And everybody's worried about the side on this game, but I'm going to take a look at the total. And what I'm looking at is, a lot of times you find a game that both teams have a lot to gain and a lot to lose on the game. They play a little bit close to the vest. Especially, and it really helps when you have two defenses that are very good, too. So in Alabama, we've talked about this many times, Alabama's defense all year long has just been terrific. They've only given up more than 17 points once all year, and that was the A&M game. They give up 29 with a -3 turnover differential. So that game could have been totally different. You take a look at Georgia's defense. They're playing really good down the stretch. The last 5 games, they've given up 43 combined points. And it's funny because last year at this time, they did the same thing. As the season went on, the defense got better and better. And right now, it looks like a defensive shootout, or excuse me, a defensive struggle here for both teams.
I think so. I mean, Mark Richt, by the way, I'm not a Mark Richt hater. I think he's done a fine job with the Georgia Bulldogs. Easy to say now, a couple of years after he's had some nice runs in the last 2 seasons. But you look at Georgia's last 3 games: Auburn, Georgia Southern, Georgia Tech. Not too difficult. Not exactly murderer's row this year for Georgia. But Bama, they're not going to have their wide receiver Kenny Bell for this one. Now, Bell is 6th on the team with the amount of receptions on the season, but he has 17 of them in 11 or 12 games, and he's also averaging about 25 yards per catch, which leads the team. He's the one that stretches the defense. So this kind of falls in with Brian saying is a potential for a lower scoring game. They don't have the guy who can consistently stretch that defense. Guys can not have to be so honest, so to speak, in the defensive backfield when Kenny Bell's not on the field, Marco.
Well, it's definitely going to be a disadvantage for Alabama, but, you touched on it about you not liking, Mark Richt. I mean, Saban versus Rick, is that not?
I like Rick, but I think Saban's
it's a mismatch. Come on, it's a mismatch with those two. And also talking about big game experience. I mean, this is uncharted water for Georgia. How long has it been since Georgia's had a game of this significance?
Notre Dame in '81? No, I'm just kidding.
You might not be that far, but seriously, Alabama's been there, done that how many different times?
Right.
What I look at is everybody's comparing the difference of the quarterbacks, and everybody likes Georgia's Murray over A.J. McCarron, and I look at these two guys and I say, McCarron's worst game performance-wise this year was an 11 for 21 performance for 199 yards. And it was the first week of the season against Michigan. Okay, in that game, they were more, concerned about running the ball, controlling the clock, and everything. But you look at Georgia and Murray's 2 performances, his 2 worst performances of the year: 11 of 31, 109 yards against South Carolina, and 12 of 24 for 150 yards against Florida. Those are the only 2 real defenses he's faced all year, and they struggled mightily. So that supports, your cause as well. I just think Alabama has just got too much, for Georgia in this game, and I agree with, I agree about the under, and I lean to the Alabama side myself.
The Tide are 4-0 Suat, straight up and against the spread in league championship and bowl games since losing to Utah in 2009. And to back up what he said about Andy Murray, he's 1-8 straight up. The Bulldogs are with Murray at quarterback when he's installed as a pick or an underdog. The lone win, by the way, in that came against Florida this year. Brian, this one's your free pick.
I'm going to take a look at the under here between the two teams. And Marco hit on this. Alabama's only played against one good defense all year long, and that was the LSU game. 38 total points in that game, and that includes the late touchdown by Alabama to win that game. And you take a look at Georgia. The two teams they played with good defenses: Florida, 26 points; South Carolina, 42 points. Scott talked about the receiver situation. Alabama does have a redshirt freshman. They were talking about taking the red shirt off. I can't see somebody taking a red shirt off for one game, so I don't think that's going to be a concern. But there's been a lot of talk about the offenses, but take a look at what these teams have done offensively. It's all been against bad defenses. Now they're playing a good defense, and it's a game that both teams know this is a huge game. It's the biggest game of the season. They're going to be playing very tight. I'll look for this game to go under.
An under from Bryan Leonard in the battle between Alabama and Georgia, the SEC championship on Saturday. When we come back, we've got a best bet from Bryan, and that's the battle between Boise State and Nevada, the game up in Reno at Mackey Stadium. All that and more right here at Pregame TV.